surrounding yourself with the right people will really make the process go better, and you can get a lot higher faster.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello, it's Neil Ball. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I'm so excited to bring you our special guest today, Todd Lemense. But before I introduce you to him, I have a quote for you. Thomas Berger said, "The art and science of asking questions is the source of all knowledge." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions so we all get the insight, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. Todd, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for coming on the show, Todd. Todd Lemense is the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Lose Your Ego and Gain the World. He is an expert on ego control and keeping things in proper perspective. He has started many small businesses in the past. Now, Todd is using his experience and does lots of consulting to small to medium-sized businesses. Todd, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
I started doing my own businesses when I was very young. I started when I was 18. Actually had businesses before that. I used to go door to door. I've always been a salesperson. So I started my own businesses. I used to go door to door selling candy bars. I go buy them at the store in bulk and sell them. And then I did a pet sitting business. But then when I was 18, I got into to outside sales and built some direct sales company. Did that for some years. Also, then I got married and we opened a gas station. We opened some teriyaki restaurants. So I have a little bit of I tortured myself for a while in the restaurant business. And then as I got older, I got into the construction business.
Mm-hmm. So did you actually have you always employed yourself then? Have you always had your own business rather than working for someone else?
I've had short stints in corporate companies, but it's been based off the experience that I was going to go into those businesses on my own eventually.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to do this for now and learn everything I can so I can, make less expensive mistakes when I start my own business.
Mm-hmm. So you've had a number of different businesses there. What were the reasons? Why did you decide to move from one business to another? Was there any particular reason?
Looking back, I would probably not do that because you start from scratch, mm-hmm. and all the things don't really transfer. You lose a lot of momentum. You lose a lot of money. It's always expensive to start up a business.
Yeah. So for example, you ran a gas station, or a petrol station, as I'd call it, and that's quite a tough business, isn't it? Because you're on quite small margins. Would I be right in assuming that?
Absolutely, and I've actually done some consulting work for other people buying those kind of businesses. And one thing I'll reach out to your listeners and tell them is when you buy that kind of business, they'll have very big gross sales. And just like you said, Neil, the margins are minuscule. And sometimes the margins aren't even there. They'll be losing money.
Yeah.
But when they go to sell the business, they will show you this, $1 million, and all the sales will be on cigarettes and gas. And so you can be buying a business for $1 million that's actually losing $50,000 a month.
Doesn't sound like the best investment, that, does it? So I've heard that.
That's how I learned that either.
Yeah, I've heard that before about petrol stations, gas stations, where you literally make the money from the sales of through the shop, and that's pretty much it. So. As you are at present, what are you doing at present to make money out of what you do?
Right now, I'm just using my business experiences. I wrote a book called Lose Your Ego, Gain the World. Mm-hmm. And I travel throughout the country I do speaking on it. So what I talk about is keeping things in proper perspective and ego control. And I'm very excited this year. It's the first time I've been invited to Pakistan to speak and to Botswana to speak. So that's a big deal for me.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit more about your book?
My book is about my experiences in my life, and it's just my story about, to real summarize it shortly, is having some financial gains at a very young age and not being able to handle it, and all the dangers that come with not being ready for success. And then so it's kind of like the building up and the breaking down and then building back up again.
Yeah. I've talked to a few people I've interviewed a few people on here who've talked about that kind of journey.
I think it's common. It's hard when you're young and think you know everything. We only learn in life from losing. We're doing well. We just kind of party and think we know it all. And that was kind of my story too. I thought I had what I had because I was smarter than everybody else and I'd worked harder than everybody else and I deserved it. And in actuality, I had what I had because I surrounded myself with the right people, had some very good breaks that I didn't realize until they weren't there anymore.
I think you sometimes find out when you try to transfer those skills to another business that you're not quite as good as you thought you were. Have you found that?
Absolutely. One thing I learned, we have a race car driver here called Jimmie Johnson. He's the most winning NASCAR driver of all time, and some of the other teams will come and try to learn from him, and they all say the same thing. They say they realize that there's no such thing as maximum effort. I think a lot of times we buy into we're doing all we can, and we're really not. Everyone's working very, very hard out there.
Yeah. And what do you enjoy most about what you do, Todd?
I enjoy that there's no caps on what I can make. You know, when you have your own business, it's not like having a job. The one misconception is instead of having one boss, you're going to have multiple bosses. So you have to be prepared for that. So instead of listening to just one person, you have to listen to 100 people. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I enjoy the income. I enjoy the freedom to be able to do what I want when I want. You can go to a soccer game or a football game, and you can go to church when you want. You can get up when you want. You can go to bed when you want. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. And what is it that drives you?
What drives me right now is inspiring other people and motivating other people and letting them know they're going to be okay, that things are going to get better, giving some people some hope. Because I know especially people who really need it there's a quote that says, there's a guy laughing and he's saying, I remember when I used to work 40 hours a week. And that's the story of the entrepreneur. You know, they don't work 40-hour weeks. They work 80-hour weeks, you know, so I like to be encouraged to them it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I know a quote similar to that. I think it's entrepreneurs are the only people who choose to work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40.
There you go. That's better than my quote.
And how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
I play sports. I do exercise a lot. I have to keep myself healthy. That's one of the things about my book is I got to be like 80 pounds overweight, and I was just drinking and partying and overeating. I was doing everything in excess. I had more cars than I needed. I had more houses than I needed. I had more girlfriends than I needed. And so now I really all destructive behaviors. So now I got all those things down to where I need them, and I keep my life very very scheduled and very in control now.
And do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
I do. I've had people that I've worked with. Chris Widener's one, and he's a pastor, and he's a best-selling author. And my ex-wife was a Korean immigrant, and I learned a lot from her. She was not in any way educated. I think she had a middle school education, but one of the hardest working and street-smart people I've ever worked with. About managing employees and surrounding yourself with the right kind of people. I learned a lot from her.
Todd, what I'd like to do now is talk to you about the time before you were an entrepreneur. What difficulties did you have to overcome when you started your business?
having absolutely no education on business and never knowing anything about business, and I think it was kind of an upside too, not having any resources. I come from a family that doesn't have money, so that was very tough to have just absolutely nothing. Getting older now and talking to people who start business, I find a lot of people who start businesses with too much resources become very, very wasteful. So there's something to be said for being somewhere in between. When you have too much, you're wasteful, but you have to know how to spend money. And I think if you get money from another source other than yourself, being parents or even a refinance on your house, we tend to piss that money away too, because it still feels like free money. When it's money that you earned by going out to work every day, you just protect it a little more careful.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So obviously you started with no education and no resources, and you've found an amount of success, and now you are educating other people. So you've obviously learned a lot along the way.
Well, one thing I like to always tell everybody, and this always drives me crazy, anytime someone who's successful financially tells you their life story, they tell you about all the hard times they had and all this they went through, but they don't tell you about the blessings and the breaks they've had along the way. And that's just as much of the story. There isn't a successful person in this world who hasn't had a lot of help from somebody. So you don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of people that will help you. You do have to be willing to ask. And it really does. You're doing that person a service by going to them and saying, will you help me? I don't know how to do this. They will help you. It's good for them because they want to give back. They want to be a service because someone helped them. They might not admit it, but when they were in your shoes, someone else helped them.
Yeah. I think especially with people who are extremely successful, if you look at somebody like Richard Branson as an example, a lot of people talk about him as being one of their entrepreneurial role models. And people see the success, but they don't see the struggle and the times where he's almost lost it all on numerous occasions and things like that, because they just see him now. And I think that's right. The thing, isn't it? With some people, with some successful people in business, it's very easy to just look at them and think, well, they've sort of figured that out and they just knew how to do it from the beginning. But the fact is, they've probably failed and fallen down and got back up numerous times to get to where they are right now.
You're absolutely right. And if you'd ask them, they would tell you honestly right off, they were not the best in their field. They weren't the smartest or brightest or most talented. A lot of time being those things, you kind of coast. It almost helps if you're just not as smart and not as good and a little foolishly naive, and you realize you're going to even the playing field by outworking those people. And that's what I like about being an entrepreneur is they might be smarter than you, have more money than you, but you can put in the hours and get down and outwork those people, and that's how you'll get even with them. And exactly what you said, Neil, everyone who's been successful usually has been bankrupt a couple times. They just never gave up. They just, no matter how many hard things happened, they just got back up and kept trying. And that's what it takes, to believe in yourself even when you fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
The biggest thing that I run into, I run that today too, is it's just that time flies. You can't wait till tomorrow. There's not going to be 7 doves aren't going to fly over and tell you the perfect time. You have to get started right now with whatever you have. Because as we know, next thing, I mean, Neil, how quickly years go by, right? They just
absolutely.
Oh my goodness, another Christmas, another summer,
Yeah. I think that's very true, that, because if you just sit there thinking you're going to wait for that perfect time, a couple of years will have passed by and you'll be looking back thinking, if only I'd done something 2 years ago or whenever it is. So you've just got to get in there and get on with it. I think that's probably that is great advice, that.
I promise it won't get easier when we're older. Nothing is. You're not going to have any more energy. You're not going to have any more money, I promise.
Oh, I think a lot of people they sit there trying to figure out what they're going to do and make sure that they get it all right. But often not knowing everything is sometimes an advantage, because if you go into an industry, if you go into a niche or a sector that hasn't got where you don't know it as well as some of the people who've been working in there before, you can figure out things that they've never thought of, and all of a sudden you bring something new to the party, and you can find a lot of success as a result of doing that. Whereas if you know all the rules, you can't do that the same, can you?
That makes sense. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
One thing a lot of entrepreneurs, a trap we'll fall into too, is that we think we know a business because we've been in a business. And working for a company and owning a company are so different. It's my stepdad used to explain that to me too. He used to say, you never know what's going on in someone else's marriage. You never know what someone else's job life is like. So you don't want to judge them or think, oh, I know I could do that better or this and that. And sometimes we think that. Oh, I know a better way to do that. We've never even done the job. So I don't want people to be cautious about trying things. They should expect it to be hard, but you have to remain flexible and you have to be resilient.
What mistakes did you make that slowed your journey, Todd?
My destruction was definitely, I guess you'd say, arrogance. As far as I started to kind of treat my employees badly, I treat my customers badly at one point. I didn't allow for things changing. I didn't remain flexible. I didn't think the business is always going to be like this. That's kind of how I thought, that things would always continue the way that they were. And in today's business, you have to constantly be improving. Any professional athlete now has dietitians and trainers, and these are guys who are pros who've been doing it for years, Mm-hmm. So you have to do that in your own business. You have to be constantly be getting better, because there's only going to be more competition in the world. There's only going to be more.
Yeah.
So if you did a business to go 10 years from now, there's going to be 30 times more people in it.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to look at a business and to assume that everything's always going to be the way it is right now. And especially if if you're new to that business, you can assume that, because it might be that your limited knowledge of it makes you think that it's always been like that. But the fact is, it's always changing. And the worrying thing is when you can't see that change, because when you can't see that change, then you're out of touch with what's going on. And I think you've always got to keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, absolutely. And be very careful with your family and your friends. The people we're closest to can sometimes, I don't want to say take advantage, or we can take advantage of each other. It can be an unhealthy relationship. So you want to hire people who are the best for the job, not because they're your aunt or uncle. And the reason is, there's a lot of reasons for it, but they probably won't do as good a job. You're probably going to overpay them, and then at the end of it, they're not going to like each other anymore. So it's really not worth it.
What are some of the things that you did before you started your business that would be helpful tips to some of the listeners who haven't yet taken the first step on the entrepreneur way?
Ask everybody who's done it before, and this is the big part of this, Neil, is actually listen to what they tell you. Sometimes we can be blinded by greed and ambition, and they'll tell us some things that, hey, you can't do this and this is why, and we'll just ignore them because we think we know better. I've done this more than once.
In fact, I'm just thinking there with what you've said, you have to be careful who you take your advice from. That's the thing with that, though, isn't it? Because there are also people that will give you advice who aren't really qualified to give you that advice. So you've got to make sure that the person that's actually giving you that knowledge and that advice is somebody that's worth listening to, rather than somebody who's just negative and maybe doesn't know a thing about it.
Absolutely right. And that's why you have to get past that insecurity. If you're going to people like family members who've never worked in the business and telling them what they think because they're going to tell you that it's great, that's not the kind of people you need to be talking to. But then you don't need people who are just going to discourage you, who no matter what your ideas are, they don't like them. Yeah. So you have to be industry-specific people, and they have to be people who are always honest.
I talked to somebody a while ago, and they described you should have different types of advisors to give you different types of support, because people who are very close to you will encourage you and tell you, yeah, you're going to do it, you're going to do well, or they should do, unless they're negative people. But then you need maybe mentors and things who will be more straight with you, and they'll tell you when they don't agree with you and things. And then obviously getting other advisors as well, similar type of thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really think about when they're in business, and you have to think about that kind of thing.
You do, and then there comes a point when the research is over and it's time to get on the road, and that's a problem. A lot of times, and you touched on this earlier, a lot of times we don't know what to do, we don't do anything. Yeah. And we kind of keep researching it forever. Well, at some point it has to become work, and you can't put your foot in the pool anymore. You have to just dive in. And you almost have to do it with an unhealthy obsession with, if you're going to open a restaurant and you think you're going to only make $30,000, as opposed to you open a restaurant and you plan on making $2 million, which one are you going to really work your butt off? You want to get let's have some big goals. Let's not just have, let's just get by goals. Let's go out there and make $1 million.
Good advice. So, Todd, can we just talk about the entrepreneurial journey a little bit more now? Do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
It is. The culture of the business is important is because your business is people. You have a product and you have people. The people is the most important. You can't clone people. There's certain skill set that Neil has, and there's certain skill set that I have, and they're not the same. As humans, we tend to be drawn to people that are exactly like us because they agree with they laugh at all our jokes. But in a business, you need an analytical person. You need some pushback. You need a sales guy. You need a salesperson. You need a saleswoman. You need an analytical engineer mind. You need an accountant. You need everybody to complement each other. Like any kind of sports team at different positions, they have different body types, different skill sets, different speed. And that's what I think the most important things.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
There's a lot of things. I think that the one I touched on earlier is surrounding yourself with the right people will really make the process go better, and you can get a lot higher faster.
So how would you suggest that people surround themselves with the right people?
Hire from other companies. Always stay in touch with people that you've worked with before that are amazing workers. Not ones that tell you. Anybody can interview well. Usually the person who interviews well is not the person that's going to do the best job. They're just good at interviewing. So seek people out with specifics that are good, and then listen to those people. Sometimes for a new entrepreneur too, you can kind of get that pound in the chest, I'm the boss thing, which serves you well sometimes, but most of the time it's going to get in your way. So hire competent people. A lot of times in American companies, they'll go out and they'll look for industry specific people only. They'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars only hiring people with certain kind of work history and education. As soon as they come to that company, they won't listen to anything they have to say about where they worked before. So why the hell did you hire those guys anyways, right? And that's what we do in our small business. So if you hire someone who knows what they're doing, let them do it.
I've never thought of that before. That's awesome. So, Todd, how much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
Used to a lot more. I used to think, this is something that I love. Now I think more of the business side of it. Because if you're in love with something, and let's say you're a fisherman, right? And you open your own fishing business, and you lose your house and your wife and everything, you're not going to like fishing as much as you used to. And sometimes when it's something that you're a little too passionate about, you can kind of romanticize the business. And this is work, and no matter what you do, if you play professional baseball or a ballet dancer or whatever you are, it's still work. Even though you love it, it's still work.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've had so many different answers to this question, and most people tend to learn to trust the gut more as they get as the years go on. But you seem to have a reverse answer for that. Is there a reason for that?
I think sometimes there's something to said for being naive, and I think as we get older, we get more stubborn and rigid in our approach. You know, one thing I've worked on this year is when a younger person in their early 20s tells me something, I actually listen to them, because when we get older, we tend to say, oh, I've heard this before. I know this situation. I know it all. I've been through it all. Well, you know, that's not true. You know, it's just your perspective on it at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you need some of that ambition and new ideas. I think as we get older, we want less new ideas because we don't like things we don't understand.
Yeah, it's very easy to do that. In fact, one of the things some people have said to me is that when they come to gut feeling, what they'll do is sometimes people, if they're in a mastermind or something, they'll actually put that to various people that they trust in a mastermind, or people that, I don't know, maybe a mentor or something, and run it past them to see if they're just thinking a bit daft about something or they're actually being sensible with their idea. And then they'll go with the gut feeling. So I suppose it's a sort of take on what you're talking about there, because sometimes you just don't have numbers to back up what you're trying to achieve. So obviously you've got to somehow gauge whether something's going to work or not. And I suppose testing's the other thing, isn't it? To test things small before you go into them big.
Absolutely. Yeah, and maybe I just don't trust myself enough because I've made too many big mistakes. Maybe I'm just so scared now, which serves me well. I'll let you know.
Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not, and many people say that the only constant in life is change. Todd, how do you try to keep up with change?
I try to constantly be learning and reading industry-specific things, networking with industry-specific people, looking for ways to do things better and cheaper, always. And it's a continuous thing. And be thinking about what you're going to do next. The number one thing I can tell you about, and I learned this from someone very, very wise, is knowing when to sell your business. If you have someone who comes and offers you a lot of money, you take it and you do something new. You can't really hold on to anything. You know, a business has got a life cycle like anything else. So know when it's time or when you're burned out, when you don't have that passion anymore, when you hate what you do, when it's become a job, it's time to get out and do something else because life is short.
What is your favorite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you have chosen it?
Think and Grow Rich is a big one with Napoleon Hill. And I like that one because it's from the 20s or 30s. And all those things are still true today. I think we need some new ideas, and all these ideas and all these success books and personal development. It's all the same stuff. And his is my favorite. He worked with Carnegie and he worked with Mr. Ford. So he worked with a lot of billionaires before there were a lot of billionaires around. And those guys have the same work ethic as Richard Branson and, Bill Gates and all those guys. So I like that. I like the history part of it too.
Yeah. I think the thing about that book was it was commissioned by Carnegie, wasn't it, I think, to work out what makes some people successful and other people, and make it why other people aren't successful, and to sort of put this formula together of how to achieve that success. And I don't know, but I think a lot of books these days are sort of recycling a lot of those ideas, aren't they? And they're not really using that same level of research that went into the original book. I mean, I am just guessing on that, but
I agree with you 100%. They said I saw a documentary the other day on Mr. Carnegie, and they said when he died, he gave away $38 million, which is the equivalent of $68 billion today. And that made me just stop and say, wow, that's something, right? Give away $68 billion?
Yeah. That's awesome. Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you haven't already signed up, then you will qualify. Todd, we're now at the part of the show where we speculate about the future a little bit. What one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
If I knew I couldn't fail, I would do more. I think that sometimes I just kind of, you pace yourself and say, I kind of, convince myself that I'm comfortable. But I think if I knew that, I think sometimes I'm doing more work, I'm not sure I'm going to get more reward, so that keeps me from doing it.
Yeah. So what would you do more of?
More of everything, more sales calls, hire more people, just grow, get bigger.
And what skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
If I could go back to go get a 4-year degree and go to business school, it would have served me very well. An education isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, but what about now?
I can still do that. I'm not too old now.
No, I wasn't suggesting you at all now, but you did say you could have done. You didn't say you were going to do, so I assumed it was something you thought might have been useful in the past. So constant education. I mean, you've obviously got the experience of having various businesses through the years and doing what you've done. So you've had probably a better education in that respect, wouldn't you say?
I do. I would. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. That's the one thing, too, about starting a business is definitely to enjoy the journey, because you're going to look back and these are the good old days when you're starting up and you're excited and you're getting your new business cards and you're looking for locations. This is the fun stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to find that just when you get the money, it's not all that you thought it was going to be. So you have to enjoy the journey the whole time.
In 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
I'm very proud of how the relationship I've had with my customers over the years. I haven't been perfect, but overall, they'd say that, I was the friendliest person, the most honest person, the most hardworking person that they've ever worked with. And that would mean the world to me, the hardworking part especially. My ex-wife used to say, a lot of times people will put on their businesses, they'll say, that we're a Christian or they're a certain religion. And she said, you should just show them that you're that by your actions and by how honest you are, to the point that they know that you are. And I always like that, Yeah. Sincerity always shows. So doing a little bit extra for free is always worth it. Always worth it.
We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. Todd, what is your favourite quote and how have you applied it?
My favorite quote is definitely, and it's an old one too, it's Zig Ziglar, and it said, you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And being an entrepreneur, your job is to be of service to others. It isn't about what you can get for them, it's about what you can provide. And I think that's a good quote for that.
Yeah. In fact, I actually think that, when you're saying about you make the most of the current time in your business and things, you're sort of getting it set up and growing your business and that kind of thing. I think one of the things about when you set up a business, your why should be about the passion you have for delivering or creating that happiness in those customers. Because if you have that, then you won't get fed up with the business. You're less likely to get fed up with the business than if your why is about the what you do or how you do what you do.
Absolutely.
Do you have any favourite online resources that you can share with us?
Everyone having their own specific thing. I still learn a lot of things quickly from YouTube videos, and early in my career, that wasn't available. You can really learn a lot from those, and of course, there's as much bad information on the internet as there's good information. So we talked about before, doing research, just because there's a website that says a certain thing, especially business things, when they're talking about numbers and stuff, you have to, everything you read and take in, look at and say, does that work for me? Does that make sense to me? Don't just accept everything at face value.
What is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
Don't wait. You'll regret it if you waited. You'll look back and it won't be easier as you get older. Nothing ever is. Start right now with what you have and do it with passion. Yeah.
That reminds me of another saying that the best time to start was 5 years ago and the next best time to start's now.
Yeah. But, that it's funny. We were having dinner with a friend and the friend said, I don't want to go to medical school because I'm 43 years old and it's going to take me 4 years. And everybody said the same thing. So you're going to be just a 47-year-old or you can be a 47-year-old doctor. Which would you prefer? Because you're going to be 47 either way.
A good way of putting it. Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Todd's favourite resource or his favourite books, you can find the links on Todd's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for Todd or Todd Lemense in the search box. Todd, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
No, I don't think so.
Todd, it's been an honour having you on the show. You've really given us a good insight into your journey and your ideas and the things that you've learned as an entrepreneur. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Neil. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter @Neil D. Ball.